You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Well, thanks for pressing play on another episode of the Two and Out CFL podcast. I'm Travis Currah. I am in beautiful Chilliwack, British Columbia. Sheldon Jones is in beautiful Richmond, British Columbia, and we are just hours after Grey Cup 111, where the Toronto Argonauts were triumphant over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 41-24, the final score from BC Place. Sheldon, what a game, what a week. This episode brought to you by a new sponsor, Triple O's, a BC delicacy that Sheldon is just exploring for the very first time in Vancouver this week.
Yes, I've heard about it, but it is the best fast food burger I think I've ever had. And I could go for more before I leave. We'll see.
That is high praise.
It is high praise.
That's no joke coming from a man of your stature.
It seems like they make everything fresh because it takes a while, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Now, Sheldon, I say a man of your stature because the amount of people that were fawning over Sheldon, like we needed security to set up a VIP section for Sheldon in the Schooners room because people just would not leave you alone. Is it getting to your head?
Oh, it's in my head, of course. It's very humbling. I love when I get to meet fans, so please continue to inflate my ego. This feels wonderful.
We still need to do the Sheldon Jones mean tweets edition. Maybe we'll make that another episode. But I did make a list of people that I wanted to give a shout out to because I am terrible with names. Now, okay, Tammy and Larry, we met them after the State of the League address at the Vancouver Convention Center. Oh, big fans, both from Ottawa, massive haters of the rest of the league. Tammy was not shy about that fact. Doug, big Alouettes fan. We met Davis. We met Brandon and Chris for the first time, who came all the way to Vancouver from New Hampshire, which is awesome. I don't think I've actually met anybody from New Hampshire before. And if Brandon and Chris are any indication, salt of the earth.
Yeah, loved meeting them. Saw them a couple times, and luckily even this morning when we hopped on the train, they were selling Krispy Kremes. It was like a fundraiser, and Krispy Kreme is in Delta. We didn't want to drive all that way, so this was just very lucky that we got our Krispy Kremes. And then, but you had to buy a dozen, so we were just carrying this box, and we were just trying to find people to give them to. And right then is when Brandon and is when he came, and so they each got one, and we took a pic, and then off we went.
Talk about the timing, and you were seriously considering going to Delta for the donuts.
Oh yeah, crisp. They're so good. And I like riding trains, so it wouldn't have been a bad couple hours, but it would have been a couple hours.
Now, some of the names are fuzzy. I should have wrote down the location. We met Terry, who I do know is an Edmonton fan. Great Edmonton, great Canadian name, Terry, Chad and Candace, both Rider fans that we met actually at BC Place. And then I met Paul and Alicia on my way to the convention center on Thursday night. And man, Paul, this guy's in the know. Alicia is in the know in football, Alberta. But Paul was testing me. He's asking me, what makes the best CFL GM? What makes the best CFL owner? And I'm like, whoa, the heavy-hitting questions on my way to go smash a couple vitamin Ps. For the entirety of Thursday night. I think I did pass the test, but we met so many great people throughout the Grey Cup Festival. And overall, of course, Vancouver did a bang-up job. And what a cool city to visit. I can't wait to come back. I know this was your first Road Grey Cup since the 100th in Toronto. So your overall thoughts on the festivities in Vancouver?
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Just all the people of the CFL family getting together. Get to hang out with Bobby again, who I really enjoy. Bobby and Mike, getting to finally meet Mike from the Brew Crimes podcast. So I was really glad to meet people and a couple others that I have forgotten the name because it's been I've had a couple vitamin C CLs, I guess you could say. Coors Light was my drink of choice this weekend. I know. Uh, but yeah, no, it's been great. Just being able to take in all the festivities with Tammy, and uh, you know, I think just the family, the camaraderie of all the fans here. There's like very little beaking. Of course, the two teams fans might beak each other a little bit, but it's just a wonderful festival, and I'm so glad we're back here, and we're gonna keep it going.
And I did want to give a
Calgary.
shout out to Simon from Ottawa. I haven't opened up the Two and Out email until literally before hitting record. He wanted to meet up with us and share some brewskis as well. He did send me the Simon Got bobblehead, so I feel like I'm the one that owes him a beer. So the next time that we're in the same area, I'm going to have to do that. Although Ryan is a Bomber fan from Ontario, and he's currently keeping score on how many beers I've got him at the Grey Cup. It is a big old goose egg, and he's at 4 or 5. If he keeps keeping score, I'm going to fall into a deep hole here. Oh, yeah.
I'm
Sheldon's
0 for
got
0, so
Okay.
yeah.
Sheldon
That's
definitely keeps score when it comes to this stuff.
just me. Yeah. Mr. Hey, give me one of your Secret Santa beers.
Don't put that on me.
Hey,
Well, okay, you could put
it's
that on me. I thought I was helping you. I thought I
You
was.
actually were. Yeah, you actually were at that time.
See, I'm a philanthropist. So let's kind of try to go through the festival, our days. I know Thursday we spent, it was really mostly about Spirit of Edmonton, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when I got to Vancouver. I went to Granville Island. We were smashing some beers at the Granville Island Brewing Company. Those were going down easy. They went down easy at Spirit of Edmonton. I saw so many great people there. And then Friday night, that was the sort of the tweet up at Mahoney's. We watched the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight at the bar, which I'm glad that it was just on and I didn't like seek it out. But the highlight of the night was Mike Tyson walking away from the camera and having no pants on.
Yes, we got quite the view of Iron Mike.
There were 2 full moons in view
Yeah.
from the Vancouver Convention Center.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's like the clip of the night too, because the fight was, as predicted, terrible
Yeah.
and fixed.
And then Saturday, my age has started really catching up with me. I'm in all kinds of pain right now. I'm hopped. What kind of drugs did Tammy give me, Mrs. Sheldon?
The Proxen she gave me.
Is that good? Is that bad?
It's what the hospital gives you for pain, so.
Ooh, should we be saying that on a public? Well, it got me through game day anyway. Saturday, also went to the CFL Fans Fight Cancer. Were we at like 60 grand throughout the whole year? An incredible event. Shark Club in Vancouver was overflowing with CFL fans. Incredible to see everybody come together for that.
Yeah, and then speaking of the Shark Club, we actually had the meetup on Wednesday for those of us that were there on Wednesday, that we were there, and I got to finally meet like Andrew from the Turf District and Joe Pritchard, like a couple people that I haven't been able to meet in real life yet. So it was really good to meet those guys, and yeah, just what a great trip. I'm not sad that it's almost over, but I'm certainly happy it happened because while I am tired, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, such a great time. I mean, that night we were walking back to the place, to our hotel, and I walked by this cafe and it boasted outside of it the best cheesecake in Vancouver. So we go inside. They had Ferrero Rocher cheesecake. What a way to end Saturday night. And you know what? Being asleep at about 11 o'clock on a Grey Cup Saturday night is my all-time record. That has to be a signal that something is changing inside of me. Maybe I'm finally becoming an adult. I forced it always to the end till the last call at 1:30, and then the beauty of Vancouver is always those bars that go till 3, 4 o'clock. But man, I called it early this year. I don't know what happened to me. It helped me get through game day, though. And then the game came. But we should mention some things from Saturday, too. Shout out to Laval Rouge Or. The Regina Rams looked like they may be continuing this unlikely run all the way to the Vanier Cup. With about a minute 15 left, Laval scored the winning touchdown, and they hung on to secure a berth in the Vanier Cup. And the other end, it's the Laurier Golden Hawks who took care of business with Bishop's University. But it was cool to watch a little bit of the Rams game at the CFL Fans Fight Cancer event, because Sheldon Jones is my personal mobile data specialist. Hey, but I became your mobile charge specialist when I was feeling generous. So that's our dynamic.
Yes, and tonight it almost helped me keep my battery alive, but it did not.
Ooh.
My battery did die before we got home, and luckily Tammy's didn't either. Okay. So we were able to make it home.
And then the Grey Cup rumor mill, as always, running strong. But some of the biggest rumblings this week would be the fact that maybe Rick Campbell and a lot of that coaching staff is done in BC. A likely landing place would be Edmonton, which is interesting because a lot of people, I heard from a friend of a friend that a BC Lion said, I'm not going to say who or what player, that said that Vernon Adams Jr. would be going to Edmonton. I kind of wondered if some of the things that went on this year meant that VA may not want to play for Rick Campbell anymore. But I'll say this. Remember what we all thought about Jason Moss and Cody Fajardo and their relationship coming out of Saskatchewan. Well, they end up together in Montreal and winning a Grey Cup. So maybe that is not the case on the outside looking in. Ryan Rick Maiden denying the Elks permission to talk to him. Maybe he gets elevated in BC. And we see what happens with some shuffling coming in the offseason. But if you had to guess, where do you think Vernon Adams Jr. is going to end up?
Alberta. I just don't know whether it's going to be Edmonton or Calgary. I could see him still being a Rick Campbell guy, but I don't. It's tough. He did at least go back to him before the playoffs, so maybe that can help him out there. But Calgary, with signing PJ Walker to not that much of a money deal, like there's no lock that he's going to be the starter, and I don't think Jake Mayer is going to be back, unfortunately. So VA could definitely land there. I just don't really know if anyone in the East or east of that is, other than potentially Saskatchewan, but it seems like all signs are pointing to Trevor Harris wanting to come back, and not just for a single season, but for multiple seasons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's some of the rumor mill, and this stuff might get going as soon as this week, really. So we'll see. We'll have more off-season talk for you all the way to training camp. It's a long road from now. That's the saddest part about the Grey Cup. But overall, I think Vancouver did a great job with the festival. A lot of the outside stuff, man, there was a lot of activations. The zip lines were popular, about a 5-hour line to get in for that. And the big drone show on Saturday night, seriously, it seemed like there was about 10,000 people there, maybe more, just to watch that. And it was much to do with the CFL. So if those guys didn't know what a bomber or an Argo was, I think they probably Googled it and found it out Saturday night in Vancouver, even though we were near a pair of people that almost had a throwdown. Somebody might have ended up in the Pacific Ocean if it kept going the way it looked like it was going to go.
Absolutely. And it was like guys in their like 50s or 60s who were yelling at each other, and it was pretty hilarious. I was part of me wanted to see something happen, but I'm glad it didn't in the end.
Yeah. Don't stand in the way of somebody's cell phone video. It might end up ugly. Or embarrassing for you, either way. But I mean, the convention center was just massive. You can't help but think maybe if the Lions were in it, the Lions Den probably would have been a little bit more packed. But I don't know. I'm not good with ballparking numbers, but it seemed like 4,000 people could comfortably fit in the Lions Den room. Like, these rooms were massive. So sometimes you don't get that same sort of energy unless the rooms are absolutely jam-packed. By Saturday, I was pretty done being on my feet, so I'm glad I didn't wander down to the convention center, but I mean, everyone's having a good time making it happen on the West Coast. And that brings us to Sunday, Sheldon. That brings us to game day, when Nick Arbuckle and the Toronto Argonauts go into game day heavy underdogs against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Dynasty talk happening again. Dynasty on the line for Winnipeg. 3 Grey Cups, 5 years, and it wasn't to be. Now, overall, and we're going to get to a lot of this stuff, I don't think the Bombers had the strongest offensive game plan. I mean, they had the MOP, Brady Oliveira, and he got 11 carries, 84 yards, including that big mammoth 35-yarder. And when that happened, I really thought that here come the Bombers. They are going to be a problem to stop for the Argos. But instead, they kept trying to beat Toronto deep. And that wasn't going to work. I think it was obvious it wasn't going to work. It's like they were trying to, I think, be smart, be cute. Try to do what they didn't do against, or try to keep doing what they did against Saskatchewan. That wasn't going to work against Toronto, and it didn't. And I think, at halftime, because, at halftime, there wasn't too much going on. The Bombers went into half with a 10-9 lead, and I think the Argos were probably very happy with that.
Yeah, it seemed like, they were doing just enough to stay in the game, and that's what you have to do when you're playing a team like Winnipeg. And, they got a key, rouge when they were down to make it like an even scoring play, so they didn't miss that point. So it just looked like they had a good game plan. They let up that one big pass to Kenny Lawler, but it kind of seemed after that they kind of shut down and just they're playing tight coverage.
Yeah, so in the first quarter, Toronto gets on the board first with a field goal. But Winnipeg scored the first touchdown. Ontario Wilson makes a big 49-yard catch. Clarcius makes a catch. Oliveira gets him down to the goal line, and Terry Wilson finishes up the play. But the Argo defense really made Zach uncomfortable. After that, Zach, he wasn't playing his best game. There were overthrows in this game. There were times when, he was standing in the pocket and the whole thing, collapsed around him. And the Argos were just making things tough on him. You knew it wasn't going to be like the Saskatchewan game just because that D-line was going to cause Winnipeg troubles, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, they just, the game plan that the Argos had was just better at that point than the Bombers did. I don't know why they didn't use Brady more. I don't know why they didn't try to establish that ground game. It just seemed like you said, they were just trying to repeat what they did against the Riders.
And now I thought the Argos took a key penalty in the first half that might have been problematic for them. Deontay McMahon gets a big 29-yard gain, but Toronto took a holding penalty there, and that had them down at the 15-yard line. So they ended up needing to settle for a field goal there. That was the point where it ended up being 10-9 for Winnipeg. So, Winnipeg gets the ball at the end of the first half, and they just kneel the clock out, and they go into the room with the lead there. I don't think it was, well, obviously, it was not a comfortable lead, but right from the get-go, Sheldon, I don't know about you, and then in the second half, I get that the Argos put up a lot of points, but I think this was Willie Jefferson's best game of the year.
Yeah, he was everywhere. He had knockdowns, he had that sack. He's he's still one of the best, premier rush ends we have there, and then also with his just giant wingspan knocking every ball down. Yeah, it's tough when you see players playing that great in games and then not coming out on top. But he certainly played like he deserved to win tonight.
Yeah, it looked like he was making Arbuckle uncomfortable at times, and it looked like he was
throws for sure.
He was on a mission. You mentioned Ryan Hunter winning the most outstanding offensive lineman for the Toronto Argonauts, and I think Willie maybe used that to motivate him a little bit. And there were some times when, the most outstanding offensive lineman looked like he was in for a rough night with big number 5, keeping him off balance. But a key play, obviously, late in the first half is Benji Franklin making a interception for the Argos. This is pre-Currah's injury, which I think is very, very key in this game, obviously. So we'll get to that a little bit later on. I just want to give a shout out to Benji Franklin, man. We run into Dave, big Argonaut fan. He's got a button, I think it says president of the Benji Franklin fan club. Pick 6 against the Red Blacks. Did he not have a pick 6 in the East final as well? He has an interception in the Grey Cup. What a playoffs for Benji Franklin, number 23.
Oh, yeah. Incredible. I think the Argos even broke the Grey Cup record for interception yards in a game tonight as well. I think I saw that on the CFL stats Twitter. And he led them. It's just that's exactly the way you have to do. You have to beat Winnipeg. You have to rattle them. You have to force them into turnovers because they don't usually make mistakes. And then the Argos were finally able to capitalize and make Winnipeg pay for their mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Pay did they ever. It took a little while, but let's talk about the halftime show, man. The Jonas Brothers. I mean, it's not my choice of genre, but, man, I'm pretty sure I knew every single song during the halftime show. And you know what? It was a great performance. I thought it was flashy. I thought it was catchy, and it was fun.
Yeah, it looked like professional. It didn't look like it was just rickety put together. Like the set actually looked really good, like a Super Bowl one. So I was really happy with the production they had there, and yeah, even more happy that they did some of their solo stuff. Like I don't know a lot of Jonas Brothers, but I know like Cake by the Ocean from one of them, and I think I'm a Sucker for You is another guy. But they played both of those songs, and yeah, it was great. Like anyone who said a bad thing about that clearly like just either just has a distaste for pop music or is just wrong, because it was great, exactly what the CFL needs.
And now Prince Harry showing up pre-game promoting the Invictus Games. I mean, that was quite the surprise too.
Yeah, I think I had seen lots of posters for the Invictus Games, so I kind of in my head had a little bit of a hunch. I was like, I wonder if going to tie this in, but yeah, cool to see him.
Yeah, that's about where I am. I know some people are saying it's one of the worst O Canadas of all time, but I thought in the stadium it was a pretty nice rendition of the anthem, so I didn't notice anything poor about it. You got all the words right.
Sounded fine to me. The only thing with poor about it was idiots saying True North in blue, but that happens.
So the second half starts. You were right. John Haggerty of the Argos, a 70-yard punt to put a single on the board and tie the game for the Argos. That was definitely a key moment in this one, although in the end, I guess it wouldn't really matter. But then momentum really went Toronto's way. Winnipeg has a 2-and-out, and then and look, not all of it was on Collaros. There were some catchable balls there, but the DBs in this game, they were playing hard. They were breaking up passes that should have been caught and normally are caught by some of the receivers. But credit, there's guys out there fighting for the ball, and they're getting paid to do the job too. And there's a lot that goes on in a football play. Sometimes when you're sitting 40 rows up and the guy on the field looks like an idiot, but try to be done. When you see the camera angle from behind and there's Willie Jefferson throwing his arm in the air and there's this other linebacker, I'm like, how do they even see that? I don't know. That's what makes these guys so good. That's why they are playing in the Grey Cup. But I really thought when Jefferson got to Nick Arbuckle, sacked him for the 7 yards, they did recover the own fumble. And what a turn of events, because Toronto punts the ball. Lucky Whitehead fumbles it. And the very next play, Kevin Mittal, the rookie for the Toronto Argonauts, takes it to the house. Argos take the lead, 17-10. What a turn of events in the third quarter for the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, I believe that's also when Brady had his bigger run, and like you said, how you thought, I texted you, and I was like, oh, now when they win, he's going to win both most MVP and MOC. But it just momentum is crazy, and especially in championship games, and especially when the majority of that crowd were definitely cheering for the Bombers. It was way louder in there for the Bombers defense than the Argos offense. I spoke to it seemed like a lot of CFL fans were just, cheering for whether it was the East or the West. But when any of the actual people who lived in Vancouver I talked to, they all just said how much they hate Toronto. And so they're not going to cheer for Toronto because Toronto sucks as a city. And I was like, okay, well, that's fair. But you could definitely see it because, you would think a lot of BC Lions fans wouldn't want the Bombers to win the Cup because of, beating them in the West Final 2 years in a row. Well, they were cheering for the Bombers.
So a big moment. I mean, you talk about Toronto getting the momentum with the Mittal touchdown, but the next drive when Winnipeg punts it to Toronto, which, by the way, we'll talk about this story. It had me choked up, man. Mittal takes a holding penalty that brings, Toronto back up against their end zone. Not quite there, but, sacrifice some field position there. And then the next play, Nick Arbuckle is picked off by Terrell Bonds of the Bombers. And he had a close call earlier in the game that he would have taken to the house. Like, there were a couple times when those Bomber DBs, they sold out for the interception. They didn't quite get it, and it's maybe a different game if they do get it. But Michael Griffin of the Bombers, the last time that these two teams played, it was at Princess Auto Stadium. The Argos do win 14-11. But Michael Griffin's grandfather is there, and Arash Madani did a beautiful job telling this story. his grandfather has a stroke in the stadium during warm-up and passed away. So, in the East Final, in the win, or not the in the West, at the end of the season in Montreal, I guess that's why I thought East Final. When the wind picked up and pushed that punt and gave Winnipeg a good chance to win, and they did win that game. It felt like divine intervention, but a lot of these players go through stuff every day. They sacrifice a lot to be playing this game in Canada, and a lot of it goes under the radar. And these stories are important to be told, and I'm grateful that one was told. And I am sad for guys like Michael Griffin that didn't get that win and win the Grey Cup. But that's the thing. It's sports. There's only one winner every year. And you did bring up the big Oliveira run. He takes it 35 yards. The Bombers are only down by 7 at that point. And I kind of wondered, oh boy, here we go. It's going to start rolling for the Bombers. They give it to him again. It's only a 3-yard gain, and then they go to hit Carrick Wheatfall, and it was a big play by the DB that ends up breaking that play up. If Wheatfall does catch that play or catch that ball, maybe things get a little bit closer here. But the Bombers kick the field goal. They're only down by 4 at that point. Now, the next drive, I thought the momentum stayed with Winnipeg, but what a turning point, man. They hit Janarian Grant. It's like a 9-yard loss. So the Argos are forced to punt a few plays later. It's blocked. But illegal interference on the loose ball. Toronto gets the ball back. That is a key moment in the 111th Grey Cup.
Yeah, it was crazy. I texted you. I was like, that's the TSN turning point. Look, what a rare called penalty, and for that to have just that effect on the game, where you get the crowd into it. You blocked a punt. You're down by 4, so people are thinking, oh my God, we're going to take the lead. We're going to get a touchdown here. But no, after a brief discussion with the refs, we have the penalty, and then Toronto keeps the ball.
And speaking of the refs, a shout out to Ben Major, his 19th season in the CFL, finally getting to officiate a Grey Cup, forgets to get the teams to call the coin toss before it gets flipped. Just another classic moment from Ben Major this season. I bet you he's thankful that a punt did not hit the score clock in this one. And the only reason that I'm hesitant to call that one the TSN turning point is because on Toronto's next possession, there's Willie Jefferson again. He picks the ball off. True. And it's Bomber ball at the Toronto 30. But here's the thing, and I did not see this in the stands. It must have been the previous possession. Zach Collaros gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And a pretty serious injury to his pointer finger on his throwing hand. I still haven't seen the close-ups. I don't know what happened at this point, but maybe that ended up being the turning point in this game, because after the Jefferson interception, Terry Wilson comes in, the backup quarterback for the Bombers, and actually Benji Franklin almost picked him off in the end zone for his second of the game. He didn't come down with it, but the Bombers came away with a field goal. But here's my question, Sheldon. The backup quarterback comes into the game, and the Bombers called no rushing plays on that possession. What are we doing?
No idea. You would think it would be like an option. They have him ready to run, and him and Oliveira on an option could be quite dangerous, actually. So, yeah, I was completely perplexed as to why he threw 2 passes in a row there.
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head on that one. They actually got pretty lucky because Benji Franklin, there's his name again, did take a PI. So it did give Toronto some yards there. But still, they get the first down, and the MOP does not get the ball in his hands. It did feel like they were a little bit scared to run against that Toronto defense. But you're at the 15, man. You're paying Brady that money, and he did have a 35-yard run earlier in this game. I'm scratching my head about that. And I guess we'll continue to scratch our heads about that for a long time. And Bomber fans will continue to scratch their heads about some of the play calls all off-season long. And then the momentum continues in Toronto's favor because Kadeem Carey rushes for 9 yards. He gets another 18, and then you get the sense this Argo team is here until the very end. And Arbuckle hits the most outstanding Canadian in the Grey Cup, Dejon Brissett, for what would end up being, I guess, the game-winning touchdown in the Grey Cup as the Argos go 8 plays, 70 yards, 5.5 minutes to go. And then you got the sense at that point, Nick Arbuckle's going to lead this team to the promised land.
Yeah, it's pretty. It wasn't quite the final nail, but you could tell. You're like, this obviously isn't the Bombers' night, and we didn't know if Zach would be coming back, but we did see him warming up on the sideline just after that touchdown, so he was going to come back in, but again, that just was not maybe the correct decision.
Well, and here's what happened, Sheldon. Benji Franklin gets hurt on the kickoff. We've heard his name. He had an interception. He almost had another one. He's breaking up plays. Well, he's off the field. And I texted you, here comes the test from the Bombers. Out comes Zach Collaros. They go to test, throw deep without Franklin back there. And what happens? Deshaun Amos makes the interception, and it is Toronto ball again. Again, there's a few possessions there, and there's no carries for the most outstanding player. And things are quickly falling apart for the Bombers at this point. It's 24-16, and then the Argos take a lead, 27-16, and then on the next drive, Robert Priester takes it to the house. Heartbreak in Winnipeg as the Argos take a 34-16 lead at that point. So Sheldon, the finger injury, going deep without Franklin back there. Amos picks it off. I think maybe at that point it would have been the right time to take Zach out of the game. I understand that O'Shea is loyal to his guys. It's clear he couldn't throw deep with any sort of accuracy, any sort of authority anymore. I know that there are fans all over the league. There are fans all over Winnipeg. They're going to be crapping on Zach Collaros. I mean, 3 straight Grey Cups lost. Fair. I do think he was a warrior for coming back in this game and even trying, and even to the very last minute, trying to score touchdowns in this one. But sometimes the coach has to make the decision and take the player out, because we know that the player is not going to make that call. But this is why having multiple quarterbacks with CFL experience is so important. And this is why the Nick Arbuckle signing by the Toronto Argonauts ends up becoming the biggest signing of the 2024 season.
Yeah, well said. Zach was a warrior, and O'Shea let him hang out to dry there. And I know it's going to be Zach saying he wanted to stay in, but like you said, it's not a good thing for him to go in there and just throw another pick. They got a touchdown. Great. Who cares? You, you at that point, you realize that it wasn't going to work out for you that day, no matter who's playing quarterback. So that's when you put in the backup quarterback so that you can save face for your face of your franchise. Because Zach is going to be back next week or next year in Winnipeg. He's signed to he still has a year left, and there's guaranteed money there. They're not just going to not pay him, or they're not going to pay him to not play. So he should face the criticisms of losing the third Grey Cup in a row. That is completely accurate. But when you see what he did last week against the Riders in the playoffs, and you see what the Riders did to the Lions in the playoffs, I think we still know that he is that elite level quarterback. But for whatever it was, and it looked like today it was the injury, although it's not like he was lighting the turf on fire before that. But sometimes you just gotta do the right thing, when it seems like it's the wrong thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I can respect what O'Shea was thinking. It's your guy. Mm-hmm. You go down with your guys that brought you to the dance, right? And I there's a big part of me that respects that. But I do think he should have been taken out. And hey, credit to these Argos. Like they came into this game with a quarterback that nobody believed in. And maybe me included. I had some big doubts, but I knew, and anybody that watches this game knows that the Argos were a complete team. They got a defense that can score, and they did. They can take the ball away. They got a special teams that's just as elite. They lose Boris Beatty, they lose Javon Leake, who comes in, Liram Hiralahu, and Janarian Grant. They didn't lose a beat. The players that they lost and the replacements that they brought in were incredible. That's why they're a championship team. Having quarterbacks with CFL experience, that's why they are a championship team. You have an Argo jersey?
My stepson is an Argo fan, so yes, I got him to get it out so I could put it up, because congrats to him and his team.
Well, and you know what? I think every CFL fan, every sports fan should be able to experience their team winning a championship in person and running into dozens of Argo fans in BC Place after just seeing their team win. I'm sure as we're recording, they are still celebrating in downtown Vancouver, and good for them. I know all too well what it's like to walk out of a stadium after your team just lost the Grey Cup, and it sucks. It really does. But one day, Winnipeg will be back. It'll all be worth it. Even next year, if they won that damn thing at home, the last 3 losses it'll be all right. Again, it's a long road to get back there. But as a Rough Rider fan, that's how I felt in 2013. I felt like the 13th man was just a thing, a footnote in history. It all feels so good. So congratulations to the Toronto Argonauts and their fans. I do want to give a shout out to Wynton McManus in this game. He came to play. Willie Jefferson came to play. Man, that guy just makes plays. That's all he does. He's so smart. Backs up. He makes interceptions. But Wynton McManus, this guy is all over the field. I actually thought that he should have been the Grey Cup MVP. He had 6 tackles. He had 3 knockdowns. He had an interception in this one. Like, the guy was... He seemed like he was involved in almost every play. And if he wasn't directly involved, he was certainly within striking distance of being involved in that play. So I understand why they gave it to Nick Arbuckle. It's the story, and he did make, and there was a solid drive there. That DeJon Brissett drive was quite amazing. And it gives a good story. Sometimes I wish the defenders would give it a little bit more respect. And that secondary and those linebackers, including Wynton McManus, They brought the heat for the Argos. That's exactly what they needed to win the Grey Cup, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and also Janarian Grant, he may not have taken one to the house, but he also had them starting in really good field position a lot of the time tonight too. So, the Argos were able to, I wouldn't say dominate in all three stages, but they definitely dominated defensively, and they did so enough on the other two just to get the win here. My hat's off to them. They had nothing to lose. Everyone had written them off at the start of the week. They're like 10.5-point underdogs, and they went in there, and Ryan Dinwiddie was able to have a game plan. They had some really good different offensive plays with little forward, like just little touch passes, some draws, and some different screens. But in the end of the day, they did enough to win.
I almost think that if Wynton McManus played 18 games this year, he would have been the most outstanding defensive player. He played 12 games this year, all over the stat sheet, every column. But he was a part of this team. He's a part of the 2022 champs in Toronto. He's a part of the 2018 champs in Calgary. And Tavares Daniels of the Toronto Argonauts is now a 3-time Grey Cup champion as well. Man, that photo that the CFL posted with him, the cigar, the champagne, like that's what it's all about. Your stat line for the Grey Cup, 15-30 for Zach Collaros, 202 yards, 4 interceptions. I do think the Bombers will be back. I do think they need to fix their special teams in the offseason. They didn't replace Janarian Grant, and they were a team without an explosive returner all season long, and that was part of their success the last few years, having Janarian Grant back there, and maybe he's irreplaceable. I mean, his touchdown rate for returns is untouched at this stage among CFL history. Ontario Wilson, 99 yards receiving on 5 catches. Kenny Lawler, 2 for 27. The fact that the Argos kept him in check and that him and Zach couldn't get going was a big problem for the Bombers. Brady Oliveira, 11 carries, 84 yards. If we look at the Argos, man, the amount of receivers that Arbuckle hit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different receivers. Their leading receiver ended up being Dejon Brissett, who had 3 catches, 45 yards, and the big touchdown. The rookie Kevin Mattel, 23 yards and a touchdown. And Kadeem Carey, 15 carries, 79 yards. A Grey Cup with Calgary in 2018, and now a Grey Cup champion again with the Toronto Argonauts. And Nick Arbuckle gets his name on the Grey Cup, just like we all thought at the beginning of the season, Sheldon.
Yeah, the season, it's so ridiculous when you have a season like this where everything you expect to happen just happens, and, nothing crazy. No, this is the most bizarre year ever, and it's been amazing. Now we have the question mark of, is somebody going to, reward Nick for winning this game and winning the Grey Cup MVP?
Interesting?
And he's going to be a free agent. Does he want to play? Is this a good way for him to go out? He said to anyone or to the media before that he was considering hanging up this year, and then he got a call from Dave Dickinson. Ryan Dinwiddie, jeez. And that changed his mind, and because he knew his system and he was comfortable there, and he thought maybe this is my last chance, and now he's a Grey Cup champion. This is what movies are made of, like Major League. This is that fairy tale ending in a movie. So we'll see what happens there. But like you said, Winnipeg, they'll be back. They still have so many weapons. They have the Grey Cup in their hometown next year, so that they're going to do whatever they can, and we'll we'll have to see if they can make it 3-6 instead of 3-5.
Well, the Argos are at 2-3. So, I mean, if
maybe they'll let the other teams play. maybe that.
James Duthie said it. The Bombers lost, 3 games in their last 12? They all ended up being to the Toronto Argonauts. Toronto and Montreal right now are Winnipeg's kryptonite. If the rest of the West needs to beat Winnipeg to get to the Grey Cup, Winnipeg needs to beat Montreal and Toronto to win the Grey Cup. Will Kenny Lawler be back in Winnipeg? There's a lot of questions. We know that Dalton Schoen is going to be back next year. That adds another element to Winnipeg's offense. I thought it was interesting that Ryan Dinwiddie said some of the plays that the Argos ran this week were Mark Mueller's, the current OC for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But here we are. The Bombers have lost 3 consecutive Grey Cups, and the Argos have won 8 consecutive appearances in the Grey Cup. Another ring for Pinball Clemens, who just seems to keep adding Grey Cup rings on a regular basis to the collection. Congratulations to the Argo fans, man. Wild.
That's the word I was going to say. It's wild to think, to imagine being a fan of a team and the last 8 times you played in the Grey Cup that your team was there and you were able to celebrate those 8 victories. Wow.
There's going to be a Grey Cup parade and 3 more Taylor Swift concerts in the 6. So, what a city. It would be. What a time it would be to be in Toronto. That wraps up Grey Cup 11 from Chilliwack, BC. I'm Travis Currah from Richmond, BC. He is Sheldon Jones. You can rate, review, and subscribe to 2 and Out on your favorite podcatcher. You can like, comment on YouTube, and check out the website 2andout.ca to see our Patreon. Thank you so much for being with us all season long. We're not going to be here 2 times a week for quite some time. We welcome the break. We hope you travel safe if you were enjoying the Grey Cup in Vancouver. Otherwise, take care of yourself and each other. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.